Giants and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, Alaskans. Welcome to Oversight Live. I am Ben Carpenter, host for the evening. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show scheduled tonight with more cutting-edge information from the legislature on the gas line pipeline. Making some progress tonight. What is Oversight Live? Oversight Live is your road to Juneau until one can be built. Alaskans know it's cost prohibitive to get to Juneau to oversee our government. You got to take a plane or get on a boat, and it is costly in time and money. Well, having served 6 years in the legislature, I thought a number of years ago, boy, wouldn't it be great if somebody just sat down and helped explain things that are going on down there, because your public meetings are recorded. So we can watch them. We can sit in the comfort of our living room and learn a little bit about our state government. And I'm here to answer your questions. We're broadcasting on Facebook, YouTube, and X. And if you're on one of those social media channels, that's how you're watching the video. If it's live, then you can chat with me. Just in your little chat bar there, text me a question or a comment, and I'll do my best to address the question on air. Don't be scared. I just popped in my mind that maybe somebody's like, oh, I don't want to do that. Don't worry about it. Everybody's got questions. The only dumb question is the one that doesn't get answered or doesn't get asked. And I'll do my best to answer it. If I don't know the answer, then, I'll research it and figure it out. If you're watching the recording, then you can drop me an email, producer@oversightlive.com. And I will do my best to answer your question by email, or if it's a good question, I'm going to bring it up on air and we're going to have a conversation about it, because if you've got the question, somebody else has got the question, and we're going to do our best to edify everyone here that's watching, and so that we can provide good oversight of our government. We got an election coming up. It's really important for us to understand what's happening. All right. Okay. And, you're giving up your evening talking about politics and about government. So we got to make it fun, right? Got to try to have some fun with this, as our president would say. And we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. That's right. We're going to have fun tonight. Thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so let's get this party started. Rick, thank you. We're going to jump into the Senate Finance meeting that occurred yesterday. We were in House Finance. Now we're going to be in Senate Finance. Happens to be the same person presenting, but it is slightly different information, because there is a refined presentation set of slides. And I have my hands on those slides, and we'll be able to jump back and forth if we need to talk about what's on the slides. So Adam Prestige, the president of Glenfarne, Alaska, is the one that's going to be doing the briefing. And I think he does a pretty good job of laying out Glenfarne's position here. So let's listen to what our legislators have to say about this project. And you be the decision maker here, the decider on drawing conclusions on what you think they're focused on.
Senate Finance Committee back to order. Your state capitol 1:35, we're continuing with a presentation by Glenfarne, Alaska LNG. We have the President, Alan Bestridge. Please continue with governances.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. We'll continue our presentation talking about the joint venture structure between Glenfarne and Alaska Gasline Development Corporation. The segment we have now, really the last of the slides that we have to discuss, go to essentially the LLC, the joint venture governance provisions that we have in the agreement between Glenfarne.
Just realized I've teed up the
HDC.
wrong slides. This is the second part of the presentation. 1 second while I fix that error here. One second.
What?
Yeah, knew there was one hiccup that was going to happen. I did this a different way today. Not that it matters, but this is the way.
Call Senate Finance Committee to order. Today's June 3rd. We have a contingent.
Let's do a
Chairman
restart.
Olson, Chairman Stedman, Senator Keel, Senator Merrick, Senator Kaufman, Senator Cronk, and myself, Senator Hoffman. Also in the room, we have Senator Bjorgman, Senator Yunt, Senator Meyer, and online we have Senator Giesel. Today we have one item on our agenda relating to Senate Bill 2001, the gas pipeline volumetrics tax. We are going to hear from Glenfarne, Alaska AKLNG as the only item. The presenters this morning are Adam Prestridge, the president of Glenfarne, Alaska, and Matt Kissinger, the commercial director of AGDC. Can both of you come to the table, introduce yourselves, and give the committee your presentation? Welcome to Senate Finance.
Speed it up just a little bit here.
Please give us your presentation.
Thank you. To introduce Glenfarne, Glenfarne is a global energy infrastructure investor, developer, owner, operator. We currently own and operate 57 different energy infrastructure assets that runs the range of natural gas to power. It includes LNG and pipeline gas. It includes power generation from grid stability backup power generation facilities, the full range of renewable energy power resources, including solar, wind, and hydro. And our clients largely include national grids and those who rely on infrastructure for keeping their countries up and running. So we have about a gigawatt of renewable power running through the country of Chile. We have a little bit more than a gigawatt of power generation in the country of Colombia. In both of those countries, we are the sovereign source of energy reliability. And so in situations where the renewable resources, whether solar energy or hydroelectric dams, are underperforming, our assets come online and make sure that the energy grids, the electricity grids for those countries remain online and keep their economies running. That's the stakes that we're used to performing under. That is the level of excellence and reliability that we hold ourselves to, and that is the mantra and the capability that we bring to the state of Alaska on this project. We have approximately 800 team members across the entire firm. Those team members include the men and women working on the plant sites, the safety foremen, the maintenance crews turning the wrench on the facilities, the network operating centers. And so operations is a core part of our competency, as well as the financial investment side and the more investment side. And so we are unique in that aspect of being able to have the investment side experience, to have the appetite and the desire to roll up our sleeves and develop projects from an early stage, as well as to hold on and operate them. And so when we look at our projects, when we look at Alaska LNG, we anticipate being a part of that project and running it for the long term. I mentioned the mix of our asset portfolio. Again, we hold on to these for their useful life. We come into projects because we think that they're good economic proposals, and we intend to stay in them for the duration.
Why do you think it's necessary for Glenfarne to step into a presentation with Senate Finance that they've been to before? They've been to other committees in the legislature before. There's no question that the people that they're briefing know who they are. Why do you think it's necessary for Glenfarne to come in and give everybody a refresher on who they are, on the scale and the scope of the work that they've done, of the organization that they have built? Why do you think that's necessary?
Under the Glenfarne portfolio on the LNG side, we have about 32 million tons of permitted capacity. That includes 20 MTPA in the Alaska LNG project, about 4.5 MTPA for the Texas LNG project, which is in Brownsville, Texas. That project is very close to achieving FID. We're very proud of that project and its progress. And then the Magnolia LNG project, which is in Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is approximately 8 million tons per year. Our experience working on both Texas LNG and Magnolia LNG helped us to really see the value of the Alaska LNG project and opportunity. First and foremost, having permits is critical. Texas LNG, as I mentioned, is on the verge of FID. It's fully permitted. It has customer allocations for its full volume. The EPC contract has been executed, and we have a binding EPC price with the firm with Kiewit, one of the foremost construction contractors in the world. And as I mentioned, we're looking forward to taking that project to a final investment decision and starting construction on that project in the very near future. Obviously, anything that we do, all the experience that we gained, the customer relations, the contractor relations from our other LNG projects benefit our work here in Alaska.
Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's nice you define that million tons per annum, the acronym, so the folks at home can follow along. But
Butter them up.
when you look at the Texas plant and the other plant, Magnolia plant, how long have they been poised in the proximity of FID? Has it just been weeks or months or years? Or
Question their credibility.
Because
you haven't been successful yet.
Get to that stage and never materialize around the country.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Responding through the chair. We've had Texas LNG and Magnolia LNG since approximately, Texas LNG was acquired in 2019. Magnolia LNG was acquired in 2020. And as anyone knows with any familiarity with LNG projects, including the Alaska LNG project, these projects take a long time to advance. When we came into these projects, COVID started shortly thereafter, and our commitment was to keep those projects alive and keep them in development through COVID. There was a significant impact on when the Biden administration paused all LNG permitting. There was a significant impact on Texas LNG when a lawsuit challenged and ultimately resulted in the vacatur of Texas LNG's FERC permit. That vacatur was then rescinded and the permit was restored. I bring that up because anytime you're developing a project like these, there are a lot of ups and downs. There are a lot of challenges that require patience and perseverance and a long time commitment to taking the project forward. I will say that Texas LNG announced its EPC contract execution with Kiewit back in March. I think that's typically regarded as kind of one of the final pieces of the puzzle to go to FID. And so this period of time of being right on the verge of FID for Texas LNG, it's really been culminating over the course of the last few months.
Senator Stedman.
And just as a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, are these $100,000 projects or $10 $10 billion projects, or can you give us a scale of what we're looking at here?
Patronizing.
Certainly. Senator Stebbins, through the chair. These are multi-billion-dollar mega projects, and so the Texas LNG project
He knows
has
that.
got a range. I'd have to check our kind of last publicly stated numbers, but but in the $5 billion range to construct a project of the size of 4 million tons per year. For the Magnolia LNG project, which is 8.8 million tons, we estimate that to be proportionally larger, but it's about twice the size of Texas LNG. So these are large, complex financings. I bring up the point that I brought up earlier about owning and operating 57 different power assets. Many of those have been built on project financings that we've put together. Glenfarne's bread and butter is project finance and putting together the financial packages that are necessary to make these projects economic.
Senator Steadman.
Oh, that's,
Thank you, Senator Steadman. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'll take a moment. I'll turn next to talk about the Alaska LNG project. A little bit about the benefits before getting into some of the cost considerations. Obviously, this committee and the legislature is very familiar with the Alaska LNG project, but just to highlight, this project has the unique benefit of unlocking the natural gas resource on the North Slope for use by Alaskans across the rail belt. As has been reported to the legislature, not by us, but by the president of NSTAR Natural Gas, this project is the only project in consideration that will potentially reduce and result in a lower cost of energy for Alaskans. It will create hundreds of millions in annual revenues in the form of state, local taxes, corporate taxes, royalty taxes associated with the project. It will result in approximately 12,000 high-paying construction jobs across the period of construction and thousands of jobs associated with the full-time operations over its decades of operation. Having a reliable source of energy that flows down a pipeline in a very forecastable way also creates the opportunity for other buyers and other industrial users to either be recommissioned or restarted in Alaska, including some of the Kenai Peninsula industrial facilities that have been shuttered for a period of time, as well as potentially data centers or other manufacturing facilities that might relocate or build in Alaska, knowing that they have the opportunity to have reliable, consistent energy supply. And then lastly, the project will deliver natural gas to regions that don't primarily rely on natural gas. So when we talk about cleaner air, we're aware of the pollution issues in the interior and the Fairbanks region. And obviously, natural gas is a replacement oftentimes for coal or diesel or fuel oil, and produces lower emissions than those alternative energy sources. I'll talk now for a moment about project costs. We understand there's a lot of interest. Excuse me while I move my notes around. We know there is a tremendous amount of interest and focus on the question of what is the project cost. In various committees, I personally have testified and explained the challenge that this question has presented to Glenfarne. On the one hand, we want to make sure that the legislature is fully informed to make the right decisions about this project, including on this bill. But at the same time, we also have a real need as a project developer to maintain the confidentiality of our most sensitive commercial information as we are negotiating with numerous counterparties. We've tried a number of different ways to address that, to make sure that we are informing the legislature, but also maintaining the commercial integrity, the commercial confidentiality of the project. We've offered to enter into NDAs with legislators that would allow us to give full disclosure. We've offered to hold to participate in executive sessions with different bodies of the legislature to provide that information. We've offered to enter into an NDA with the legislature's industry expert advisors so that they could be a third party validating our information. Each of these options hasn't been acceptable for various reasons, which we respect. We respect the integrity and the obligations of the legislators, and so that is what it is, but it has created a real challenge for us. If anyone saw, this was obviously a significant focus of discussion during my testimony to the House Finance Committee yesterday. It's also been a focus of conversation and presentation to to the House and Senate Resources Committee. And again, our goal as a long-term partner in the state of Alaska is to be a good partner, to be transparent, and I can tell you that just from the leadership of Glenfarne, we've really wrestled with the ability to kind of thread the needle of appropriate disclosure here while maintaining the integrity of the project commercial discussions. With that in mind, we also discussed this issue with the co-chairs of this Senate Finance Committee yesterday as well, including based on reactions to the presentation in House Finance yesterday. Based on these discussions, we've agreed that the best way to present the project cost construction estimate is to provide our estimated range of cost that reflects our best expectation of what it will cost to construct the Alaska LNG project. And so that's what I will walk you through in just a moment here. On this slide, you'll see that we are providing a range of expected cost outcomes for each phase of the project and the total construction costs for the project. You'll see that we have a tighter range on the pipeline because it reflects the confidence that comes from having a Class 2 estimate on that sub-project. The Class 2 estimate is the result of the FEED, the front-end engineering design process that was undertaken under Glenfarne's ownership. We commissioned the engineering firm Worley, one of the top engineering firms in the world, to conduct that full FEED on the pipeline. That FEED, as I mentioned, concluded in December with a Class 2 estimate, so that results in kind of a more confident, narrower band on that estimate. The other ranges on the LNG facility and the gas treatment facility are supported by a variety of studies and inputs and also Glenfarne experience, including those studies that were previously conducted by the producer group that owned the project earlier and were conducted during the period of AGDC's ownership. In order to come up with these ranges presented here, we've taken all of those various studies as well as our own inputs and experience developing Texas LNG and Magnolia LNG, and we've further adjusted those estimates to account for inflation to 2026 numbers. This estimating work, puts our estimated range of the pipeline construction cost between $13.2 billion and $16.9 billion. Our estimated range on the LNG facility construction is between $23.6 billion and $28.4 billion, again, which is informed by our experience estimating, procuring, and contracting in real time for the Texas LNG construction, for the Texas LNG facility construction. Obviously, we recognize that Texas and Alaska are not the same construction environments. However, the real-time inputs, the procurement, the materials, the costs that we have taken into account, that we have estimated for the Texas facility, have provided useful data points for our estimate on the Alaska LNG facility. Lastly, we estimate that the gas treatment facility will have a construction cost between $7.7 billion and $9.2 billion. Taking all of these together, we put the total estimated range of construction costs for the full Alaska LNG project between $44.5 billion and $54.5 billion. This is an expensive project. However, we are confident that it can be economic. These numbers do reflect the challenge of a project that has been decades in development, and they underscore the need for a tax arrangement that supports the project advancing in its development. I'll pause there for a moment. With numbers of this scale, you're no doubt concerned about project cost overruns, which I'm prepared to discuss next. But before that, I'm happy to pause here. Chair Hoffman, if you'd like.
Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. Just to go back a little bit, so you said you were at Class 2 on the pipeline, and so I didn't, where are you class-wise in terms of the LNG and gas treatment plant?
Thank you, Senator Kaufman. If I will, I'll ask our partner from AGDC, Matt Kissinger, to speak to that, only because the most recent engineering studies on those projects were conducted under AGDC ownership.
Mr. Kissinger.
Yep. Senator Kaufman, through the chair, the LNG plant, well, I should say the whole project, when we handed the cost estimates over to Glenfarne, we're all at a class 4 level, which is sort of a 30% accuracy range. And so assumedly the LNG facility and the GTP are still at a class 4, though it sounds like the LNG is at a class 4, but informed by some of the contracting that Glenfarne have done.
Okay. And these are ACCE class that we're using?
Senator Kaufman, through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. And I'm just curious, later when we get into schedule, I'm sure your schedule maturity is probably similar as far as work breakdown structure, project controls that would be based on the level of your schedule for construction of the pipeline. So we're concurrently developed on those deliverables for that aspect of the project.
Senator Kaufman, yes. Through the chair, yes, I agree with that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Kaufman. Thank you, Senator Kaufman. Senator Stedman.
I got a question, but just a clarification. You used an acronym here a minute ago. Could you help us with that so we can follow along?
AACE that's a standard for cost estimates.
But what's it stand for?
American Association of Cost
Estimators.
Estimators, yeah.
Okay. Just want to follow along here, Mr. Chairman.
You actually have people that just live to do this. It's amazing.
Okay. So if I could, we'll just take the first one, the pipeline. These, if I understand correctly, are cost estimates to the best of your ability, and then without contingencies and without, let me stop there and then I'll have a follow-up. Is that correct?
Senator Stedman, through the chair, that's correct. What we've done here is present the hard CapEx construction costs as best as we can factually estimate them. And so contingency is obviously a factor in any project. It is something that can adjust with the range. It's also oftentimes a negotiated outcome with the lenders and investors in the project that want to see certain levels of contingency. What we've done here is present the numbers that we think represent actual construction costs for the project.
So just out of curiosity, is anybody else putting together why this is important? Like just out of curiosity, like Glenfarne's not asking for the legislature to QA/QC their numbers. Like, please validate our numbers that it's going to be that these are good numbers, right? They're not asking for that because they don't need it. They've got a project that they're responsible for. And as we'll find out here in a little bit, and we've heard before, cost overruns are on the equity owners of the project, not on taxpayers, not on Alaskans, not on the state of Alaska, the government of the state of Alaska. Okay. So if they're wrong about their projections, they're the ones that foot the bill, right? So where's the connection? For the legislature, where's the connection? The only connection would be in the price of gas to us, because that's how an additional cost to the project would manifest in a negative fashion to us, is either the project doesn't get done or our prices go up, right? But our prices also go up with additional taxation. So what's the point of asking the question about the cost, scrutinizing the cost estimation of the project? What's the point?
Okay. And then, and I thank you for that. It seems like there's been a lot of, at least from the information I've got from contractors, substantial cost escalation since January of this year. And also, even in today's news announcements, apparently there's going to be another round of tariffs or new tariffs coming out of Washington that most likely would affect everything that's going to get imported into the country, pretty much, the way it looks, of substantially small.
So I don't believe your numbers. I don't believe your numbers. I think your numbers are wrong and it's going to be more expensive. Okay, we get it. Senator Stedman thinks it's a more expensive project. So what? So what?
Smaller tariffs and was, I think, repealed here a few months ago. But can you kind of, do you have any updates on that, or do you want to get back to the committee after you have a chance to review some of that stuff on potential impacts?
Senator Stedman, through the chair, certainly happy to follow up with the committee to provide additional information that might be requested. What I will say is that these ranges and these estimates do include escalation forecasts, and they do include our best estimation of potential tariffs. They include the cost of tariffs as they've been considered over the past year or so. I can say that we've had literally hundreds of people working on putting these together between teams at Glenfarne and teams at Worley, as well as the construction contractors that have bid and provided inputs to the project cost. And so things like tariffs and other escalation of materials and inputs is accounted for as best as we can forecast into these estimates. I will say that that is also part of the challenge of presenting numbers in a body like this, is that some of these numbers, the final numbers, are unknown and can be subject to changes in law or unforeseeable escalations and changes in the market. So that does present one of the challenges to presenting a cost estimate like this.
Senator Stedman gives him a what if and then asks him why he didn't figure that into his numbers. Like, you badger him about giving him more numbers. So you give him numbers and then you badger him about the numbers you give him. Like, you can't win. You can't win. It is an ego thing. Senator Stedman, love you, brother. But this is your ego speaking, right? You've got to prove that you know more about building pipelines than the guys who build pipelines. Okay? So prove it and let's move on.
Senator Stedman.
I could assure you that the committee is very comfortable with capital costs moving. We
Yes,
deal with it every winter here.
We know,
Never
we
seem
know.
to move against us, dealing with all our, projects around the state. So
We
we
know when-
understand. We understand the impacts
So
of that.
patronizing.
And so these numbers then, they would reflect the desire to have the volumetric tax as presented by the governor embedded in it, and then any changes or increases that the committee may contemplate would be in addition to that. Is that correct?
Senator Stedman, through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. I just, a little bit for the folks at home, as we sometimes say, there's comments out there, conversations of why are we at the table, or all the other hearings you've been at. I mean, really, we're just really getting started here in Senate Finance. We haven't had a lot of water under the bridge in this committee, so because of the way the process has gone so far. But now that we're here, people ask, well, why do you even care? It's Glenfarne's problem. And I guess there's kind of a yeah, but there. It's true in a way, but then the impact of that is cost to the consumer. The impact of that is if through incorrect estimate or, let's say, inadequate management of costs during project execution, because if you don't have good oversight, costs can easily get away, then that means that we're kind of leaving money on the table through revenues that we don't get, or through the cost that's imposed on the consumer.
Leaving revenues on the table that we don't get is based on a decision of one tax rate over another tax rate. If we don't pick the right tax rate, then we don't get as much revenue as we could have got. So cost associated with the decision to set the rate at a certain percentage or the proper rate means if we don't understand costs, then we don't make as much money as we could otherwise, right? And the first point that Senator Kaufman is making about the cost, this is the biggest argument that they have. If you're wrong about the cost, then we're going to pay for it. We, the consumers, are going to pay for it. So how would that manifest? That would manifest in a contract that says your price is contingent upon the cost of the project, or some mechanism there that would rely on it. So the more expensive the project is to create, the more expensive it is for you to purchase gas. Okay. Is that the reality? Is that the reality? We're going to find out that it isn't. Cost overruns, if it is more expensive than the range that they gave, has nothing to do with the cost of gas that we are going to pay. The cost overrun is on the people financing the project.
So both of those have a heavy impact on the future of Alaska. So I just want to speak a little bit in defense of those who have asked about that, because there is a knock-on effect that it has with what the benefits that Alaska can expect to get from this. So, but I do appreciate that you may have things that have to be confidential for your business purposes, but I just thought I'd put that on the record.
Thank you. You have any comments on Senator Kaufman's statement, Mr. Prestige?
Yes, Senator Kaufman, through the chair, thank you for that. Certainly, we recognize just the importance and the gravity of the decision that's upon the legislature right now. As you articulated, for the Phase 1 pipeline in particular, the only place for the costs of taxes to be borne are by the ratepayers of Alaska, who are going to be buying the gas off the pipeline. Ultimately, the revenue that comes from selling gas off the pipeline is what will pay for this project, for the pipeline project. And so, our best estimates have gone into that. We've taken assumptions of what we hope that the tax might end up being, and that informs the contracts that we are negotiating with gas buyers right now, which we're prepared to discuss next, as well as the way that we're intending to address potential cost overruns.
Can you address the concept of phasing this project? Because I think in the past we haven't faced a situation where the line was going to be phased. Why are you presenting a phased project, the benefits that you see?
Certainly.
Listeners of this show can tell you exactly why it's a phased project, because we've already covered it. And if the legislators were paying attention to other committee meetings other than just their little world in their own committee, they would know the answer to that question already.
Chair Hoffman, thank you. The phasing of the project is something that has been considered over the last few years. AGDC was putting that phasing into implementation at around the time that Glenfarne first started its conversations with AGDC back in early 2024 about coming into the project. The reason for that, there are a few reasons here, as I've presented here on this slide. First and foremost is the energy crisis in the rail belt and the decline of gas available out of the Cook Inlet. We've had testimony in various chambers from NSTAR about the potential for Cook Inlet gas to run off in the 2030s. There's a lot of discussion and detail behind that, but ultimately, one of the core reasons for phasing the project is so that we can build the pipeline first and get gas to Alaskans without waiting for an LNG project to get built. We want to solve the problem that exists right now for communities here in Alaska. The second is a bit of a matter of financing. Taken as a whole, the entire Alaska LNG project is very large, as I presented on the numbers, a range that exceeds $54 billion. And that's just a very large financing to undertake. The pipeline itself is no small matter, but easier to be broken up into separate financings. There's also different, slightly different kind of investor and lender base for pipelines versus LNG facilities, and different preferences. And so it basically.
Okay, so what he just said is what we've heard before, but worth reiterating. The people who would be investing in a pipeline are not the same people who would be investing in a LNG facility or an export facility. Two different groups of investors. So you break it into phases, and now you've got a smaller project for the group that wants to invest in each one of them, as opposed to going out and trying to find a mega investor to invest in this mega project, right? Or cobbling together a bunch of people to invest in a big project when all they really want to invest in is the smaller portion of the project. That's feedback coming from the industry, the financiers that are saying, you know, we're not so sure about 40 to 50 billion. But if you break it into like 10 to 12 billion, yeah, we could probably swing that. That's feedback. So they come back to the table and say, okay, well, maybe we need to break this into phases, and how can we do that? We didn't start out this way. This is how AGDC and Glenfarne have continued this, but it was started in AGDC, and that's overcoming objections that they're seeing out in the industry. This committee doesn't see any of that. It's not working on building a pipeline. These guys don't know what they're talking about. They'll second guess people who do. They don't know what they're talking about.
Facilitates the ability to have two separate financings that are smaller and more tailored to the desire of customers, of investors and lenders, rather than having one larger, complex investment. Then the last point that I'll touch on is that the phase approach was also the result of years of feedback from LNG customers worldwide that looked at this fully integrated project, liked the idea of having North Slope gas, liked the idea of having LNG from the state of Alaska, but looked at the pipeline as a real challenge, where LNG buyers weren't necessarily willing to sign up to that risk or that exposure to waiting to see if a pipeline could get built. And so the idea of phasing the project is, let's put the pipeline in advanced development, take it into FID before building the LNG facility. That way the customers who sign up to buy LNG from Alaska LNG will have the confidence that there is a pipeline that's being built and that will be there delivering gas to the LNG facility.
And phase one, for everyone that's listening, goes from the North Slope to South Central?
Correct. It originates, Senator Chair Hoffman, originates in the North Slope and terminates in the Anchorage region.
And then we've all heard that this project is imminent and close to FID. Do you have any proposed time frames for phase one?
Certainly. Chair Hoffman, as with any project of this nature, that's a challenging question. We are pushing this project as aggressively and as expeditiously as we possibly can. There are some things, as with any project, as I mentioned earlier, that are unforeseeable, whether it's a COVID epidemic, whether it's a massive change in the market, whether it's litigation. Those types of things can interrupt and cause project delays and schedules. And so I give that caveat to explain that when we talk about a potential FID, which we are targeting to achieve later this year, possibly the third quarter timeframe by September, October. Those are timeframes that are subject to adjustment, and they reflect our best estimate on what is achievable. But we have to be very upfront that large projects are challenging and can be delayed in their development.
It is possible to think that you will have everything you need for an FID by February of this year. The February that's already passed. Like last year, you thought you would have it by February, and you tell people, we think we'll have it by February. And then you don't. And the project, for whatever reason, various reasons, stretches on and on. And now you're saying we'll have FID towards the end of the year, or third quarter next year, or third quarter this year, or maybe it was fourth quarter this year. Anyway, September, October timeframe. Okay. Because you don't control, you don't control it, everything. You got a lot of people who are second guessing them. Like, well, the project's not going to happen because they haven't had FID yet. Oh, they said they were going to have FID and they keep pushing it and it's not, blah, blah, blah. It's a major project. I think of it in terms of like military operation, because that's some of my background. You can think that a battle's going to go one way and then it takes forever long. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. They're like, oh, this is going to be over. Russia's going to wipe out those Ukrainians and get it be done, right? And then, no. For various reasons, it is stretched on. It has just taken longer than what initially the prognosticators and the people who knew thought it was going to happen. Same thing with these big projects. There are a lot of moving pieces and a lot of things that need to happen. And some of the committee members are doing the very bare minimum necessary to stay aware of what's happening with this pipeline and with this project. Like, if it isn't in my committee, I don't concern myself with it. That's a reality. If I don't care about it, if it's not here, I'm not paying attention. It is very clear with some of the questions that are being asked. That's where you're at.
And the last part of that question was construction timeline.
Senator Hoffman, whenever we complete FID, the pipeline will have a construction period of about 2.5 to 3 years, 2.5 years to get into flowing gas, and another 6 months or so of commissioning, startup, and operations. And so you can look at this as about a 3-year period from FID until the completion of construction and the full commercial flow of gas.
Senator Kaufman, do you have a question?
Thank you. I'm just curious, like the number of work fronts, if we could just go there a little bit. So if you're going to build the pipeline, you're not going to start from one end and just slowly work your way to the other. So I'm just curious within the phase one, what the project staging would look like, how many work fronts and likely where they'd be located?
A little down in the weeds.
Thank you, Senator Kaufman, through the chair. I've turned to this slide, something I was going to talk about a little bit later in the presentation, but it makes sense to talk about it now. You'll see in this middle column the contractors and delivery partners. When we look at the construction plan for the Alaska LNG pipeline, you're right, it's a 800-mile pipeline approximately that we are breaking into 4 different spreads. And so each of those spreads is roughly 200 miles, give or take, and they'll essentially be treated as an independent construction project. And so for each of those spreads, there will be a primary pipeline construction contractor or a consortium of pipeline construction firms assigned to that spread, and they will construct each of those spreads simultaneously. And so at any given time, we will have at least four different construction processes going on the pipeline to build each of the spreads in parallel.
Can we go back to slide 9, please?
Absolutely.
Senator Kaufman, follow up.
So each of those, if you think of those as branches of the project, so they're kind of subs working within the umbrella, each of them will have their own work front for a section of the pipeline to build out and then interconnect at some point to tie in to each other's scope?
Senator Kaufman, through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kaufman. Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Prestige, first, thank you for bringing these numbers. These this is something we haven't seen before, and I appreciate it. Let me start with just an ignorant question. When I look at the midpoint here between low and high, and I figure out what the plus or minus is, the pipeline, you're plus or minus 12.3%, and all the others are lower, 9.2 and 8.8. And if the pipeline has the Class 2 estimates and the others have the Class 4 estimates, why is the spread on the pipeline bigger? What did I miss?
Thank you, Senator Keel, through the chair. I wouldn't say that these ranges reflect any particular, any specific estimating range. We've talked about kind of the Class 2, the Class 4. Rather, these ranges reflect Glenfarne estimates of what we're calculating as our expectation of where the project will come out. So it's a little bit more of kind of, I would consider it more of different sensitivities or different cases that reflect our expectation of the outcome of the project.
Senator Keel.
So, Mr. Chairman, let me see if I understood that. I'll say it in different words, and you can tell me what I've got wrong. This isn't your Class 2 estimate. This is an adjusted version of your Class 2 estimate based on some things you know.
Senator Keel, through the chair, these are numbers that reflect our best estimates and things and inputs like the Class 2 feed, the Class 4 feed, our experience contracting for LNG right now on the Gulf Coast. Those are all inputs into what are the Glenfarne cost estimate ranges that you're seeing on the screen right now.
And none of this money gets spent, and nobody goes into debt if you don't pass a bill, if you don't figure out what the right tax regime is going to be. All of these questions are pointless if you don't fix the tax problem. Don't understand how your line of thinking, your questioning here, has anything to do with fixing the tax problem.
Senator Keel.
Can I ask if they're just directionally higher or lower than the Class 2 number you got from the contractor?
Absolutely, Senator Keel, through the chair. I mean, as we've talked about, the Class 2 range is plus or minus plus 15%, minus 10%, and that number is in the middle of this range.
Senator Keel.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. That helps me with my mathing. A question for whichever of you would like to take it. We had testimony from AGDC at the finance table last year, February, I think it was. If the pipe only, okay, phase 1, costs $15 billion, and I note the midpoint of this range is 15.05, so we're right in there. It's likely that imported gas will be the better choice for South Central Alaska. Still the case, or has something changed?
Senator Keel, through the chair, I'd say that even with this updated estimate, when you incorporate the import facilities for the imported LNG, that this still can clearly beat imported LNG over the long term. And I think Adam is going to be presenting a bit more around this, the contract that's being developed with NSTAR. And I believe that Mr. Sims from NSTAR presented some of this to House Finance recently, where we'll begin to crystallize that there is no risk to the Alaska utility payers on the changes and the cost overrun risk coming from this.
Senator Keel.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't asking about cost overruns yet, just the price tag. I think the numbers look great at full project, right? When we get to export, Fairbanks wins, South Central wins. But I'm still working out in my head, so that what's changed since February of last year is that import LNG costs then were underestimated. Is that compared to this? Is that what I understood you to say?
Senator Keel, through the chair. So last year we presented the study by Wood Mackenzie that compared this. One of the things that study left out, and it's clearly articulated on the study, is they left out the cost of the actual import facilities. And so it wasn't really an apples for apples comparison to what we're doing now, which is the delivered cost of gas into the NSTAR system, for example. It's still our contention with the updated Class 2 cost estimate that we're able to deliver over the long term LNG from this pipeline to NSTAR, even with just phase 1, for less than the cost of importing LNG.
Senator Keel. Thanks.
If I may, Chair Hoffman, respond to Senator Keel as well.
Please.
It's a core principle of phase 1 pipeline that it needs to be priced better than the alternatives, and so we have structured the gas sales contract and our negotiations with NSTAR and other utilities to make sure that we are delivering pipeline gas at a price lower than the alternative of LNG imports. And so I agree with everything that Mr. Kissinger has stated. When we look at the alternative of importing LNG, it's the index price, of course. It's the cost of shipping it to Alaska, the cost of amortizing and operating a regasification facility, and then it is the unknown volatility that is embedded in LNG imports. And so some of the things that we've discussed with NSTAR quite extensively is a historical look at some of the massive price spikes that have occurred on the LNG global index that would have exposed ratepayers to very significant energy costs for periods of time. I can just assure you, I'd ask, you don't have to take our word for it. NSTAR has been in this discussion with us on this contract in particular for well over a year, and just a significant amount of time and effort analysis that's gone into ensuring that the contract that we structure with them is the lowest cost alternative.
Thank you, Mr. Prestige. When we switch back to presenters, please identify yourself for the record. Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. Just in the area of cost, switching to a phase 1, phase 2 type approach, did it drive many changes in the design? I mean, I can think of double block and bleed at the future point of tie-in for the liquefaction somewhere along the line that maybe you wouldn't have had, but probably would have anyway. Were there any substantive design changes associated with the phasing concept?
I kind of feel like I'm sitting in front of a professor here, or a student asking questions in a class to try to to learn. Gee whiz! Like how does this happen? How does this help us get to a resolution to the bill? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. Maybe I'm the only one. What is the difference between a phased project and an unphased project at this point? What does it matter? The thing you've got sitting before you is a phased project. Yes or no? We're going to do tax abatement. We're going to do a volumetric tax. Yes or no? How are we getting there?
Senator Kaufman, through the chair, I'd say some of the design features of having a phased project are certainly do exist. I'm not sure that any of those features were really changed as a result of the phasing, but some of those examples are an LNG facility on the Gulf Coast would typically have a facility to receive the gas and then treat it before processing it through liquefaction. In our phase design, that treatment occurs at the gas treatment facility on the North Slope. Phase 1 of the pipeline flows a relatively small amount of gas, and so it doesn't require nearly as much compression as would be required to flow the full 3.5 billion cubic feet a day during phase 2. And so phase 2 of the project does include, and these numbers are included in this estimate for phase 2. Phase 2 of the project would include building additional compression units across the down the pipeline. That's all part of the permitted. That's all part of the permit package for the pipeline, and so that's certainly within the plan and design and within the permitted project. But those kind of the phasing means that we're able to undertake those portions of the project at a later time.
Senator Kaufman.
I'm good.
Thank you, Senator Kaufman. Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I mentioned this before, but we had a previous proposal in front of us years ago that was with the three majors in the state, all equal roughly in concept, each owning 25%.
Where'd that project go? Remind me.
And I remember having discussions in the conference room, the governor's office, that the financing would be backed by utilities. And that was clearly not going to ever happen because the regulators won't let them. The risk is much too high. And we haven't clarified that yet with the RCA and our regulatory arena here, but I would be highly surprised if in the state of Alaska, the NSTAR and other companies like that would be able to take on the added risk of cost overruns and development risk of a project. So I don't think that's even a likelihood.
This is great. You throw out a problem that nobody's talking about, and then you cause it to become a thing that we have to deal with. It's like, we'll talk about utilities. This was pertinent way back in the day when we had a project that died because nobody wanted to continue it. Is that going to be a problem with this? Like, nowhere in any of the meetings that we have been paying attention to have we been talking about anything with utilities being the financiers of the project. So what if they were? All of the utilities, with the exception of NSTAR, are all cooperatives. You elected their members to the board, right? You elected the board. So if they want to invest in the project, if you are asking them to invest in the project, who is Senator Stedman to say no? I'm not saying it's wise. I'm just saying, come on, guys, stay in your lane.
Of it ever happening.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Please proceed.
Senator Stedman, through the chair, thank you for that comment. I agree with you 100%. And so the way that we have structured our contract, which were, as Mr. Sims has represented in other hearings, on the verge of executing very, very soon, is that the ratepayers would have no exposure to cost overruns on the project. And if I will, I'm going to turn to this slide, which again was presented by NSTAR to the House Finance Committee. It identifies a fixed price of gas on the pipeline during phase one of $16. I will give a caveat that, as with any commodity contract, that $16 does escalate with an inflation linkage, and so it goes up linked to inflation over time, but it is not exposed to commodity indices. It's not exposed to global markets. It's not exposed to cost overruns of the project. It is a formula-based price that is forecastable and knowable. As additional volume comes online to the project, we've structured our agreement with NSTAR so that the price of gas would gradually reduce as the volume of gas increases from 500 million cubic feet a day to 700 million cubic feet a day. Again, that's significant. Those numbers are larger than the current gas market in South Central Alaska, but we believe that as secure energy is available, there will be an increased demand for gas that could result in this $16 to $10 reduction. The real goal for this project is, of course, on the far right side of this slide, which is articulated as saying, if the pipeline is flowing more than 3,000 million cubic feet a day of gas, then the price of gas to NSTAR and to other regulated utilities that are buying under similar structures will be reduced to $5 per MMBTU. Obviously, that 3 million cubic feet a day threshold is triggered by phase two. Phase two will will consume between 2.8 to 2.9 BCF a day. And so if at any time we go from phase one into phase two, it will trigger this price step down. So that's the structure of the contract. Again, we're very cognizant that this contract will go to the Regulatory Commission of Alaska. The Regulatory Commission of Alaska's one of their mandates is to protect the consumer from cost overruns and from exposure to variable pricing. And so none of those, no risk of cost overrun is going to the ratepayer. This is a fixed price, 30-year contract for sale of gas to NSTAR on the terms here. What I will just add as a
go
final
back
point.
in for just a second.
And
So the question that the legislature should be asking, if they're asking for to understand that project, is this point right here with the 500 BCF requirement for purchasing, for flow. Okay. Right now, we don't do 500. The demand for natural gas in South Central is not 500. The demand for gas in South Central plus Fairbanks is not 500. So how do we get to 500? I suspect that there is a contingency here that if we can't get to 500, but 500 is the threshold by which you're going to get $16 gas to NSTAR, to the utilities, right? That doesn't mean it's 16 to you. It means 16 to the utility, and then they add their prices on top of it. If the difference between 300 and where we're at now and 500, it doesn't materialize, the executive orders that President of the United States signed authorize Department of Energy to have purchase agreements. So I wonder, and this is the question that I would be asking, does that mean that if the current demand does not equal 500 in the contract, is there a way that we don't get charged more than 16? Because I suspect that we will have a challenge getting to the 500. We may be able to get to it over time, but immediately we might not. So does that mean that the price is actually more than 16 until we're at 500? Or is the federal government stepping in with a subsidy and buying the difference between 300 and 500, or current demand and where the project needs to be financeable, right? Remember, the contract that Glenfarne and NSTAR are going to sign, and potentially the other utilities would be signing, that contract is part of the financing package. If you can get users to sign contracts to buy the gas, the investors are going to want to see that. But if you can't guarantee $16 because you don't guarantee that you're going to have 500 throughput, you can only do 300, that's what we're currently buying, currently using, then what's making up the difference? If the federal subsidy comes in and buys the difference, and they're just pre-buying gas, basically. Maybe it goes to the federal installations here in Alaska. Maybe it gets exported or shipped somewhere that the Department of Defense would need, or the U.S. government would need at some later date. But the government, you could arrange a contract that says, I'm buying gas today, and then I'll have it delivered at some future date. Yes, the cost might be less in the future, but I need the project now, so I'm subsidizing it now. I wonder if that's part of why Glenfarne can be so assured that they can sign contracts for $16 gas, even though they can't be sure that they're going to have 500 BCF throughput. So that's what I would be concerned about.
Those no risk of cost overrun is going to the ratepayer. This is a fixed price, 30-year contract for sale of gas to NSTAR on the terms here. What I will just add as a final point on this,
before you move off that slide, can you address gas consumption and prices for Fairbanks? Or is that coming up later?
Senator Chair Hoffman, we'd be happy to. I'd have to follow up with some specific information about gas prices in Fairbanks. What I can say is that we believe that this would result in a serious reduction of gas price alternatives in Fairbanks.
Are you finished?
I'd like to make one last point on kind of the cost overruns and the contract structure by just articulating and making perfectly clear on the record that Glenfarne is supportive of language being added to any property tax bill that prohibits cost overruns on the project from being borne by either the state or the regulated ratepayers who are buying gas off the pipeline.
It should put to bed the conversation about cost overruns, right? Like, just put it in the bill. You don't need to talk about it anymore. It doesn't need to be the boogeyman. Just put it in the bill that there will be no ability for Glenfarne, NSTAR, utilities, nobody, no how, no way can charge customers for cost overruns for the project, okay? And then we can stop talking about it. It doesn't need to be written about in the press. Doesn't need to be a thing to be pulled out and beat up and scare people over and justify not moving forward, right? Just put it in the bill that it's not going to happen and then move forward. Just do it already.
Good morning, gentlemen. Will passing this legislation significantly reduce the time to FID?
Thank you, Senator.
Bam, there's a question.
It makes a big difference, and so I can just give just a bit of clarity that, or a bit of a picture. We had the Alaska Sustainable Energy Conference in Anchorage about 2 weeks ago. There is a lot of interest in this project. All the project contractors were here, many of our LNG buyers. We had bankers and potential lenders and investors attend that conference. They're all very enthusiastic about being a part of this project, but they are seeing this process unfold and basically waiting to find out how the legislature is going to proceed.
Senator Merrick.
Yes, thank you. So would FID still be in the third quarter of this year, or would it move up? Would that timeline move up?
Senator Merrick, through the chair, as with everything, timelines and cost estimates include assumptions to the best we can, and that FID timeline that I identified earlier, that does assume that the legislature passes a tax bill that is feasible for the project to handle. If that were not the case, as I've said in other committees, that would inject a level of uncertainty into the project schedule.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Merrick.
Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Merrick. Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. It would be interesting on this slide 11 to see overlaid the throughput. So if we had a separate graph for that, or somehow just show what the volumes are that we're talking about at a given point beyond the price point. It would be an interesting overlay on this to show the magnitude of it. But that brings me to the question as far as yesterday, I think it was yesterday, they all run together. We were talking a little bit about project management and some of the challenge of managing all the interfaces. The subject we were getting on is kind of why projects go wrong and challenges that projects have. And so the interface, the stakeholder engagement, all of those key pieces. And this one's complicated. God help you, you're here talking to the legislature on a beautiful summer day. So as far as the gas supply, the gas has been busy on the slope doing its main job, which is producing oil because of the relative value of production. So it's acted as a gas cap, as an injectant to help move gas to where you can bring it up the pipe. And so in the grand scheme of things, is the availability of gas, are we working with all the interfaces and stakeholders that need to assure that the gas is actually available for the big picture that you're putting together with phase 1 and 2?
Senator Kaufman, through the chair, thank you for each of those points. Very important. On the throughput question, I just want to highlight, in case it's unclear, on the bottom axis of this graph on the screen, you've got indications of what the throughput would be at each of those price levels, and so we have $16 gas at any level below 500 million cubic feet a day. As that volume increases between 500 and 700, there's a gradual proportional reduction in the price, and then at 3 million cubic feet a day, sorry, 3 billion, it drops down to $5. And so happy to follow up if there's any other throughput discussion you'd like to have. On the management and challenges, that's certainly an element of a project like this, and I appreciate that you've identified, one of the priorities there is how we interface with stakeholders. As I've said many times, our commitment to Alaska is to be a good partner, and I sincerely hope that our track record of engagement in the state reflects that. And some of the ways we've done that have been to some of the very small things: opening an office in Alaska, hiring Alaskans. We have engaged very heavily to provide opportunities for Alaskan contractors to bid, to participate in the project. Very, very significant and engaged discussions in negotiations with Alaska labor unions to ensure that we have Alaskans working and building this project. At the same time, it's the interface with the legislative body, and Senator Keel, you made the comment just recognizing the significance of providing some of this cost estimation information, and that's reflective of our commitment to be a good partner to the state of Alaska. And so that commitment to stakeholder interface, this is a unique project that has a lot of stakeholders, a lot of public stakeholders, and so that's key to how we're going to get this project done. Happy to talk more either here or at a different time about kind of the more technical, construction management elements that we're putting into place.
Senator Kaufman.
Buried within my framing was the question about the actual supply of gas, the approvals that you're going to need to be able to pull volumes of gas off in your interface with state agencies and commissions in order to assure that. So how is that process looking?
Senator Kaufman, through the chair, I'll let my colleague Matt Kissinger speak to that in just a moment. But of course, the availability of gas is a fundamental part of the project. That goes into the financeability, and so the questions you're asking will all need to be satisfied, not just to the satisfaction of this body, but to all the lenders and investors that are going to put their money at risk and need to ensure that gas is available. And so that's a core part of what we'll do. And I'll ask Matt to comment as well.
Mr. Kissinger.
Matt Kissinger for the record. Senator Kaufman through the chair. One thing to note is that in 2015, the working interest owners of both Prudhoe Bay and Point Thompson petitioned the AOGCC for the necessary offtake authorizations for the full amount of gas required for this project. And in those submissions, there was modeling around the need for that gas for pressure support and pressure maintenance at Prudhoe Bay, and how that need had really declined over the years. Now, one thing to note is this project wouldn't take all of Prudhoe Bay's reinjected gas. Right now, Prudhoe Bay is reinjecting around, I think, over 8 billion standard cubic feet a day, which, just for people's information, that's the same amount of gas that Japan uses in a day or all of Germany uses in a day. It's a tremendous amount. So we would be taking a portion of that gas between, around 3 BCF to just over 3 BCF, depending on how much is coming from Point Thompson. In those petitions, the working interest owners highlighted the oil losses that they anticipated from going to major gas sales. And those oil losses in 2015 were estimated at less than 300 million barrels. And this is in the pack that was sent to AOGCC with those applications. Since that time, of course, Prudhoe Bay is only more mature. They do gas cap water injection. And we also contend that there is some element of accelerating production, because you're taking, right now Prudhoe Bay is gas constrained as far as we would understand. Gas handling constrained, especially at the compressors in the summer and the ability to re-inject that gas. And so by taking some of that gas for major gas sales, you should be logically opening up more wells with a higher gas-oil ratio to backfill that gas into those compressors. So I think there's a number of things that move around, and those are all part of our negotiations with the producers around both Prudhoe Bay and Point Thompson. I would say everybody is negotiating in good faith at this point in time. We've got the Phase 1 gas under gas sale precedent agreements, and we're already under discussions for the Phase 2 gas.
Senator Kaufman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kaufman. Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Prestidge, I don't remember exactly whether you said having this supply could or should attract new users, but I'm trying to get to numbers that let you deliver at $16 in-state use only. And when I look at the Department of Revenue's model, if we go with the governor's bill on tax, I think at this cost estimate, you're looking at $23 gas. So I'm trying to understand how many customers at 16 come in, and how far are you along in talks with them? Or is there something Revenue's model misapprehends?
So, Senator Keel, through the chair, this is Adam Prestidge for the record. We don't need a full 500 million cubic feet a day. We need a volume closer to between 250 and 300 cubic feet a day at that number, $16 of gas. NSTAR is the bulk of that. They've got a demand between 150 to 200 million cubic feet a day. There are additional utility buyers, including Chugach, each of the electric cooperatives. There are also a number of different customers that could potentially buy gas, including some of the mines that are in development, some of the industrial gas-consuming facilities on the Kenai Peninsula that have not been operating because of unavailability of affordable gas. And so it will be important to have additional customers to make sure that we have kind of a sufficient level of demand. And each of those are discussions that are ongoing and part of the plan to incorporate here.
Senator Keel and Senator Stedman.
Thank you. Same time, we're talking about, I think you said gas in 3 years or so. So mine takes a lot more than 3 years to open. And some of those industrial users would be hard pressed to make fertilizer for the commercial world markets or what have you out of $16 gas. So how close are you to bankable, I guess, is really what I'm asking.
Senator Keel, through the chair, that's a great question. If you'll pardon me, some of those get into some of the sensitivities of our negotiations we're having with some of these parties. So I got to be pretty careful because we do have confidentiality agreements with each of them that I haven't gotten into. I will say, just as a conceptual level, we need to be able to show contracts, and even if there's a consumer that would start consuming gas, a period of time after commercial operations on the pipeline starts, as long as our model, as long as our investors and lenders can see that those contracts are in place and that there is an expectation, a contractual expectation that those revenues will be paid, then that's going to provide, support for bankability.
Imagine if we were a full-on socialist government and those people were responsible for ensuring that we had energy in the state. It is not pertinent. These questions are not pertinent. What you're basically saying, this whole line of questioning, what you're basically saying is, we don't trust you. You're telling us that you can get a contract signed that stands up in the court of law for $16 gas, and you want us to believe you. That's what you're saying. Like, we don't believe you. We're not going to lower taxes because we don't believe you. We're not going to play ball. We think you're full of it. We doubt. We don't understand. We don't know what you're doing. We feel like you're like, what difference does it make if you pass the bill and put a volumetric tax with a reduced tax from what the current statute is, and it moves the project along and the project fails? What difference does it make? If the project fails, there's no skin off your back for making the change. There's no negative impact to the state of Alaska for making the change. It's not like there was going to be 20 mil tax on this project. And if we do this and you're wrong about your costs and it fails, then we've somehow lost 20 mils in taxes. Like, these guys are already spending the revenue in their mind for this pipeline that they thought they were going to get, and now they've got a different pipeline that's they're going to get a whole lot less money off of. What difference does it make? Let them build the pipeline, and if they fail at it, we don't have gas. That's the difference. We don't have any alternative other than to go find gas in Cook Inlet or import it for $16 or greater for the foreseeable future. I mean, these guys ought to be asking questions that are incentivizing Glenfarne's success, not questioning their integrity, not questioning their ability to plan, not questioning their details, or they're just their. I mean, the leader here is sitting here saying, we're going to sign a contract with Instar. It's just a matter of time for $16 gas. And the senator says, well, I've seen a presentation that says 23 is the minimum. So What do you say to that? Like, well, our contract is going to say 16. I don't know what information you're playing off of, but we're going to have a contract that says 16. And with that contract and your tax bill, we'll be able to go get financing for the project. I mean, there's this is ridiculous.
Thank you, Senator Keel. Senator Stedman, then Senator Kaufman.
Yeah, just a point and then a question, but we were talking about Prudhoe Bay. There has been some concern expressed from the Department of Revenue of oil loss, and it could be significant. If oil prices are at $100, it could, impact the state upwards of $1 billion or some number, a big number. So we need to clarify that, Mr. Chairman. I think with these updated capital numbers today and ranges, revenue could zero in a little bit more and help us with that.
What does updated capital numbers have to do with oil production? What does updating the capital numbers on the gas line pipeline project, especially the terminal in Nikiski, what does that have to do with whether you're going to have oil increase or decrease on the North Slope? Just making stuff up.
But one of the concerns that I have, and I'm not a rail belt senator, right? I work on the islands, so. But the impacts on Cook Inlet and the producers in Cook Inlet. And I think it'd be handy to have, Mr. Chairman, an analysis done by somebody to help us. Take a look at what's being produced out of Cook Inlet, where their contract times are and their volumes, and how this project then phases in Cook Inlet and how Cook Inlet's handled, because there's several concerns, obviously, is the Cook Inlet produces a lot of jobs and keeps, and gas prices are competitive, to say the least. And then in the event that we totally upend Cook Inlet, somebody's going to be faced with a lot of reclamation fees to take down all those platforms and rip everything out of the ground.
So we're going to say no to the tax bill before us? Or we're going to set a higher rate for the tax bill? What's the so what here? My dear friend, Senator Stedman, what does this have to do with the task at hand, which is decide what the appropriate tax regime and rate is for this project? If Cook Inlet dries up because we've got 100 years of gas coming off the North Slope, that's progress. We've got family involved in gas in Cook Inlet. I have family involved in gas in Cook Inlet. They're probably out of a job if Cook Inlet dries up and you can't sell expensive Cook Inlet gas in the pipeline. If you can't do it, then yeah, it dries up. And there's cost associated. There's contracts that are already there. There's mechanisms that happen and people got to clean things up. Yes. What does that have to do with the conversation at hand? There, Sitka Senator. The rest of us are looking at high cost energy and a way to lower the cost of energy for our families and for our businesses. If there's something that has to be done in Cook Inlet to clean it up, then we'll deal with that. But there's no reason to stop the project. There's no reason to say no to the tax reduction. I mean, it has no pertinent value to the conversation and the task at hand.
So, there could possibly be collateral damage, and I think we need to take a look at that and be cognizant of that if there is an issue. And if there's not an issue, then we don't got to worry about it. But just when we look at the charts, it just shows like the gas going into the Bowl Anchorage area just starts on one day. Like you're just flipping a valve, and it looks to me like it's going to be phased in over time. So we need some assistance on that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Stedman.
You don't need assistance. You want assistance.
Mr. Prestridge.
Thank you.
Senator, Chair Hoffman, if I can respond to Senator Steadman, you're absolutely right. There will be a phasing, and so that's part of the projections and the model that we've created for the pipeline, is that there will be a increase, a ramping up of volumes on the pipeline as contracts expire coming out of the Cook Inlet and are not renewed, and that forecast, that kind of phased ramp-up forecast is incorporated into our economic model for the project.
Senator Steadman?
Yes, and then they added, if we do Donelson Creek, I think they're, what are they, 10? Instead of you're at 500 MMCDF, or whatever, and they're at 10. I think if I remember right.
Yes.
So, and if Anchorage is at 250 right now in that range, or wherever they are, 10 isn't much of an increment when you've got to get to 500. So we need some assistance on that as far as where the demand may come from. If it's a fertilizer plant.
Why? You don't believe that they're going to find the demand, so you're not going to adjust the tax rate? They're going to have to find the demand. They're going to have to make the project work in order to get to FID. You're just one checkbox on a list that needs to get done in order to get to FID. The tax policy needs to change, and that's what you need to focus on. We're dealing with curmudgeons in the legislature here. Stuck on themselves, huge egos. Got to satisfy your own ego in order to move forward.
Which has its own economic challenges, or other entities, but there's only one Donelson Creek, and that looked to us like a pretty big load and a very good project, but we don't have 10 Donelson Creeks to get 100.
Mr. Prestige.
We don't have the development out there that's demanding the gas, so we don't need the gas. Like, this is evidence of somebody who's been in the legislature and focusing on government for far too long. You don't build a dam after you need the electricity. You need the electricity before you build the dam. You don't build a pipeline after you need the gas. You build it before you need the gas. It is a very small mind to say, oh, we can't find other buyers that aren't gonna want to buy gas. With low cost gas comes opportunity for. I mean, it just shows you that developing the economy, doing something other than spending other people's money in state budgets, is not on these people's mind. It is, they're struggling. They're struggling to come up with intelligent questions. They're struggling to catch a vision for something that is greater than what currently exists. It's a vision problem for them. They don't see it. They're skeptical because very small minds. They're normally only concerned about how much money are we going to get to education? How much money are we going to give to Department of Law? How much money are we going to give to, how can we stop the governor with his projects? What are we going to do for plussing up the unions? Like, this is the conversations that are happening. They're not concerned about any kind of energy project. They don't think about it. Absolutely. It's sad. It is just sad and somewhat depressing to hear these group of people who are supposed to be the best and the brightest of us flounder about trying to figure out how to pass a tax bill.
Senator Steadman, through the chair, it's what we need to achieve is between approximately the equivalent of 250 to 300 MMCF a day at $16. when we talk about the Donlin gold mine, we announced previously that we've entered into an LOI for gas sales that was announced back in January for gas sales from the pipeline to the Donlin gold mine. I've got to be careful of confidentiality, but it's a volume that's a multiple of 10. It's not 10, significantly more. And then, but you're absolutely right. There are a number of just smaller consumers, 10 MCF a day here for, various mines for different, industrial users. They do add up when you aggregate them, but each of those is important.
Yes, Mr.
Senator Stedman.
Moon and the memory raven just passed me a note. It was 30, not 10. But still, to get to 100, you need 3.
Yep.
And we only have 1. So I think some of these numbers look, we just need to put it in scale of what we're dealing with. So there's no surprises. And then we can better understand and justify when we give concessions.
It's not your responsibility. It's not your concern.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Senator Kaufman.
Thank you. I just want to start by saying to Senator Stedman that we'll make an honorary rail belt senator out of you yet. Get gas fired and all. So, but those are good questions. I think that the whole thing around the integration of our existing gas supply in Cook Inlet and the incoming gas supply, all of that, this project exists on 2 levels. At its kind of lowest level, it's a utility, in-state utility, and then it turns into like a major resource development and a value-added project with it. So we kind of have to deal with those 2 tiers of it, and that's part of what, again, some of the folks at home are curious about. But the Cook Inlet gas is arguably going to be coming in at a lower price point than what the slope gas being delivered. There might be some spread there where that's actually lower cost. And I'm just wondering, has there been any
that is not accurate
analysis around dealing with that interface? Because if you think of this as a utility at that first stage, then there's that obligation to provide the lowest cost energy. And just if there's been analysis there and what that plan looks like.
Let's think this through for a second, okay? Let's think this through. You got all the gas that Instar ever wants coming down the pipeline, and they're going to pay $16 for it. Why would Instar buy any gas from Cook Inlet? Oh, because it's cheaper? Okay. Well, they might buy cheaper gas. If it's more expensive, they're certainly not going to buy it. They don't even need it. They got enough gas coming down the pipeline. But if for some reason there's not enough gas coming from the pipeline and you've got gas available from Cook Inlet, it isn't going to be more expensive than 16, because that's what you're buying off the North Slope. It would have to be less than that, or it would have to not be there. I suspect that it puts the producers in Cook Inlet out of business. That's what my conclusion was 3 or 4 years ago. This probably puts the gas producers in Cook Inlet out of business. Even if they can tie into the system and sell their gas to the export facility, they're going to have to do it at around the $10 rate or somewhere below the $10 rate that they're selling to export customers. They're not even charging that to us. Like the gas that we just bought from Hillcorp was $16 this winter. Current contracts are $13. $10 gas is gone. Cook Inlet's not going to sell $10 gas to anybody. Not stay in business. It likely dries up Cook Inlet. Just so happens that those Cook Inlet jobs will have a pipeline to manage, and they will have a facility down here in Nikiski to manage, and they will have a facility up in the slope to manage. So the jobs will just transition from Cook Inlet to the pipeline project. That's how things happen.
Looks like as it's worked over time with, you know, our prices right now, the contracts start to play out. Well, more gas may be available at a slightly higher price, and so there's going to be some price competition there. And I don't know who's working that, but that's something I think, following up on what Senator Stedman said, I see it as sort of the transition, the management plan, and the economic model for that piece of the puzzle.
Mr. Prestige.
Senator Coffin, through the chair, Adam Prestige, I think that makes total sense. That those are all components that we've spent a lot of time analyzing and recognizing. It's not just us that needs to. It's not just Glenfarne that needs to solve that question. AGDC, the state of Alaska, has alignment in solving that. But more importantly, so does our customer, NSTAR, and the other utilities. They all have a mandate to provide the lowest and most reliable gas for their customers. And ultimately, whatever package we agree between the project and those utilities is going to need to be approved by the Regulatory Commission of Alaska, who has a mandate to solve exactly what you're describing. So a significant amount of energy has gone into making sure that the way that we structure these contracts does address that.
Mr. Kissinger.
Yep. Matt Kissinger for the record. Senator Kaufman through the chair, just to add to that, a couple of things to keep in mind. One is the older contracts out of Cook Inlet certainly were less expensive than this, and you know we lived a long time off of that lower cost gas. But according to the testimony of Mr. Sims and the House Finance Committee the other day, the latest contracts coming out of Cook Inlet are $16. So we feel like this $16 range not only beats the cost of imported LNG, but likely beats the cost of Cook Inlet gas over the long run as we move towards more and more difficult gas. The other thing to keep in mind is that these utilities need firm gas, and so they need to have contracts for gas that's definitely going to be delivered. And if you look at the contracts out of Cook Inlet, the contracts drop off a lot faster than the technical decline of Cook Inlet. And that's going to be a factor in this transition that has to be taken into account.
Thank you. Further questions on slide 11 before we take a brief break? Before we get into pipeline cost overruns, we'll take a 5-minute break. Braddy's.
How long do you think we're going to talk about cost overruns? You've got a presentation where Glenfarne says just put it in the law. No one's going to pay for cost overruns except the investors of the project. So we just cut out the next 15, 30 minutes of the briefing, right? Guess the old men needed to go to the bathroom.
Volumetrics tax, we are going to the slide 12, phase 1, pipeline cost overruns. Mr. Hendricks. Mr.
Hendricks.
Prestige.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. This is a bit of a summary of some of the discussion we've had earlier. I'll just touch on each point just to reiterate as we resume the session that both the contractual structure, Glenfarne's position, and what we would support as the legislative structure is that there is no risk of cost overruns to ratepayers. Again, there's a fixed price 30-year contract to the utilities that does not adjust for cost overruns. That contract will be reviewed and approved, would be reviewed and approved by the RCA before going into effect. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, Glenfarne is supportive of language being added to any tax bill that prohibits cost overruns from being borne by the state or by the state's regulated ratepayers.
Next slide.
If you'd like, Chair Hoffman, what I'm prepared to do next is talk through some of the more fundamental points about the project, give an update about who the partners and customers of the project are, a bit of a project update. Then, as I mentioned, at the tail end of the presentation, I have some more specific details on the operations and governance of the 8-star joint venture between Glenfarne and HDC.
Please do so.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Hoffman. I spoke earlier about why I have a two-phased project, but again, that's a core part of how Glenfarne is developing the Alaska LNG project. When I speak, sometimes I'll do the best I can to make clear when I'm talking about phase one or the fully integrated project. Sometimes it gets a little, as we're kind of talking about project development, it gets a little blurred. So of course, please ask if that's unclear. One of the things that we're very proud about is the partners that we've brought into the project. And so when Glenfarne first came into the Alaska LNG project, we were very clear that we aren't going to try to do this on our own, that the only way to undertake a project of this magnitude would be to recruit and partner with industry-leading experts who know what they're doing on their different subject matters or elements of the project, and really build a world-class development team to deliver this project. And so that's what we've done. We announced the appointment of Worley as our primary engineering partner. They performed the feed on the pipeline. And Senator Kaufman, to your question earlier, Worley will also be acting as the EPC manager, the EPCM, for the construction of the pipeline. And so they'll oversee, kind of on a fully coordinated basis, the construction of the different spreads, and each of the different contractors on those 4 different spreads will be reporting up through Worley, and Worley will be acting as EPCM. We've also got a partnership with Baker Hughes, the foremost equipment manufacturer and energy services provider, really worldwide. We're very proud of our relationship with Baker Hughes. They're a partner on our Texas LNG facility as well. POSCO out of Korea has just been an incredibly enthusiastic and valued partner to the Alaska LNG project. They will be not only supplying steel that will be rolled into pipeline and installed in Alaska, but also be buying 1 million tons per year of LNG from the Alaska LNG facility. We have another partner that is a major U.S. equipment manufacturer that is confidential at this point, but is an important part of our consortium. We also have announced different agreements with world-class partners across the different elements of the project. And so right now we do have gas sales precedent agreements in place for phase one with each of Exxon, Hilcorp, Conoco, and Great Bear Pantheon. And those are detailed agreements that outline price, term, volume. We have a tremendously strong lineup of construction contractors that will participate in building each of the 4 main spreads and also the Point Thompson transmission line, the 66-mile line that runs from the Point Thompson unit to mile 1 of the gas pipeline. And so if you look here, Worley's as identified, MasTec, Quanta, Michaels, U.S. Pipeline, Barnard and Seachem, all major pipeline contractors with extraordinary levels of experience and expertise in pipeline delivery, as well as ASRC Energy and Doyon Energy Services, very, very capable pipeline construction firms themselves. I just highlight them separately to highlight our effort and our desire to have Alaska-based contractors, ANC contractors, participate in the construction of the pipeline. Then in terms of line pipe and steel supply, as you see here, our pipe will be, our steel will be produced by a few different steel mills, including POSCO, and then will be rolled into pipe and kind of finished into finished pipe by Europipe out of Germany and Corinth Pipeworks out of Greece. And Dillinger is one of the owners of Europipe.
Questions on slide 16, Senator Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. President, or Mr. Chairman. I got a question on 15. I'm just kind of curious, and then I have one on 16, but The pipeline equipment, major pipeline equipment manufacturer or supplier, why would that be confidential? Because there's only a handful of them that are going to be able to make pipeline machines of any
None of your business.
significance and other equipment.
Senator Stedman, through the chair. Listen, that's a household name. It's a fantastic company. They just requested to keep their name confidential until a further stage.
Until you pass a bill and the project moves forward, because they don't want to be embarrassed by being associated with this clown show. That's why.
In the project.
Can you tell us the color?
I'm sorry?
The color?
I can't.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Just check.
Senator Stedman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And then on the contractors of the 4 sections of the pipe, are they Arctic experience contractors, or how much experience do they have in, say, Alberta or Alaska or what have you? Can you help us with that a little bit? Because I don't know these folks.
Certainly, Senator Stedman would be happy to do that, and I can commit as a follow-up to give you identification of each of their pipelines, the specific pipelines that they've worked on. What I'll say is that MasTec, the major construction firm, would be building through their pipeline subsidiary Precision, and Quanta would be building through their pipeline subsidiary Price Gregory. Price Gregory has a long-standing history of building pipelines in Alaska. Obviously, when it comes to ASRC and Doyon, you've got a lot of Arctic experience there. Same with Worley. They've overseen many Arctic projects, but I'd be happy to provide kind of a more detailed set of pipeline and Arctic credentials.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Please proceed.
We talked about
Arctic credentials are important to decisions on tax policy.
About the availability of gas on the North Slope. Earlier, there was a question from Senator Kaufman. Well, what I'll identify here is there are a number of different places that gas can be provided to this project from on the North Slope as it's currently constituted now. Obviously, you've got the Prudhoe Bay unit that includes Conoco, Hilcorp, and Exxon. There's the North Star unit that is a Hilcorp unit. There's the Point Thompson unit that includes Hilcorp and Exxon together. And then you've got the Great Bear Pantheon region, the Great Bear, and you see 88 energy energy there as well. What I want to highlight is our expectation that as this pipeline advances in development, there will be, and into construction, there will be even more exploration and production of natural gas on the North Slope as a commercial outlet for that gas becomes available. Everyone here knows, as has been identified in this session, that right now gas has been a byproduct or a factor in oil production. It's never been the commercial objective. Delivering this pipeline would change that to where there would be a real commercial value and commercial outlet for gas on the North Slope. I'll take a moment here. This is a very important slide. What we have here is a recognition and desire from some of the most sophisticated, large, capable energy companies in the world that have publicly declared their desire to buy LNG from Alaska LNG. And so what I want to focus on is not only I'll talk about each of these customers individually, but the validation and the credibility that these customers wouldn't step into this project unless they really believed in its potential going forward. So the first, I'll just go from left to right. The first is that's the logo of CPC Taiwan. That is the National Oil and Gas Company of Taiwan. They signed a letter of intent back in March of 2025 to procure 6 million tons per year over a 20-year contract from the Alaska LNG project. 6 million tons per year is a massive LNG contract by industry standards, and I think it underscores the importance that this project plays, both in terms of delivering secure energy and affordable energy to our overseas customers, as well as the international relations element that these contracts can provide, which provides a strong tie of energy trade between these nations and the United States. So you start with one national oil and gas company of Taiwan. PTT is the national oil and gas company of Thailand. They signed and announced an LOI for LNG supply in June of 2025. You'll see the pictures here. These pictures they identify kind of signing ceremonies for each of these events, and it's often brought up that an LOI is non-binding. That's obviously true. We're very familiar with that. But each of these negotiations for a long-term LNG contract, these are very long relationships. It takes a lot of time to negotiate a full LNG sales contract for a contract that is worth many billions of dollars and lasts for 25 or 30 years. And so each of these processes starts with something like an LOI. What's unique about this is having these be publicly announced and then effectively endorsed by the governments, whether it's the heads of state or the energy ministries on both sides. And so in the picture with CPC, obviously, you've got the AGDC team as well as the governor, and you have the CPC team as well as the energy minister of Taiwan. The second picture there with PTT, that includes the leadership of both companies as well as the energy minister for Thailand and the U.S. ambassador to Thailand. The next, moving to the right, is JERA. JERA is a utility in Japan that buys LNG for consumption in Japan and also trades. JERA is the largest buyer of LNG anywhere around the world. They are as sophisticated as anyone in the market could be about when it comes to buying LNG and making good LNG procurement decisions. They're the industry leader, and they chose to buy LNG from Alaska LNG. And so you can see the picture there. That was a signing ceremony with the JERA team. Included in that picture is Secretary Burgum from the Department of Interior, Secretary Wright from the U.S. Department of Energy, as well as leadership from JERA and from the Ministry of Economic Trades and Industry from Japan. POSCO we've discussed as a fantastic customer, a fantastic partner to us, buying 1 million tons. Tokyo Gas, another similarly sophisticated buyer of gas out of Japan that buys for the consumption and use of the Japanese population, is committed for 1 million tons. And then lastly, on the far right, commitment from Total Energies to buy 2 million tons of LNG from Alaska. What's significant and different about having Total Energies relative to the other buyers is, first, Total Energies is obviously is not an Asian consumer. They're not an Asian utility. They are a France-based global energy player, and they're also a very sophisticated developer of LNG projects themselves. And so they have a number of different LNG projects that Total has developed and built and now operates. They're also the largest buyer of LNG from the United States. And so when it comes to knowing about LNG projects, what it takes to build them, and what makes sense to buy from them, they are as knowledgeable as anyone could be. And obviously they have stepped up and shown their public support. You can see the picture on the right. That's our CEO, Brendan Duvall, the CEO of Total, Patrick Poyan, and Senator Sullivan and Congressman Begich. And so I would say that this is as blue chip and as strong of a customer panel as you could possibly ask for on a project like this. This represents on this screen here 13 million tons per year of gas, of LNG procurement. The project overall has a nameplate, a full capacity of 20 million tons per year, so we're at 13 out of 20. What I will say, what I want to make the important distinction of, is in order to get to FID, we need to have marketed, or we need to have commercialized or contracted 16 million tons per year, not 20, but 16. So you need about 80% of the volume to be fully committed to customers. And so when we look at 13 million tons, we're at 13 out of 16 in terms of customer allocations. We do have a late-stage negotiations for the further volumes to go from 13 to 16. So, on the customer side, we're very pleased with that. Obviously, we have detailed, careful negotiations ongoing with each of these parties to turn these LOIs into long-term binding contracts.
Imagine when they go try to have a conversation with a potential buyer, and the buyer's watching the news and catches their Facebook feed, and it says something about Alaska legislature doesn't really want the pipeline, right? There's some story about how pipeline's going to. Anyway, point is, wouldn't it be great for them to be able to go back to those customers that they're wooing right now, and be able to say, "Hey, the legislature's on board"? Because right now they can't say that. They will. They'll go and say, "Hey, we're negotiating with the legislature," and those customers will turn around and look at the news and do their own research and find out, it's not really a sure thing. We saw what happened in resources committees. It appears that there's conflicts with the local municipalities. I'm not even sure you're going to be able to build a pipeline. Totally different conversation about making a sales arrangement if you've got a legislature that's on board, that is communicating support and encouragement for a project that they asked to be built, which is not what we have, which is not this line of questioning that we have coming out of Senate Resources or Senate Finance. The legislature asked for this project a decade ago. It wasn't necessarily these guys, but it was probably Lyman, Hoffman, and Stedman. They were there when they created it. At least maybe Donnie Olson was around then too. The legislature asked for the project. A decade later, it's coming to fruition, and now you've got new people that are in the mix, throwing up all sorts of signals that they don't want the project to go forward for various stupid reasons. Got a question here I want to address real quick. Rick says, Ben, do you think these nuts will ever bring to a vote? Seems they're stalling just like Senate Resources. My sense of it is that they are not stalling in the same sense that Wielechowski and Giesel were stalling. I don't sense that. I think this is more driven on it's more driven. I mean, let's just call the spade a spade. It's Bert Stedman, Senator Stedman, curmudgeon of the Senate, and probably Lyman Hoffman have their doubts about some upstart private company coming in and being able to do what they haven't been able to get AGDC in the state to do for a decade. That's why they keep pointing back to, well, we had this project back here and we had the major players. You're not a major player. You're just a minor player, right? So I think that has more to do with this. It's ego. It is we're in charge and we're gonna do our due diligence, and I'm gonna get all my questions answered, and we're gonna do it my way. This is our Senate. We do things differently, right? I think that's more what the thing is here, rather than an anti-oil and gas development mindset, which was in Senate Resources. Okay. So I think those are two different things. Does it come to a vote? Yes. Eventually it will come to a vote. Now, here's the issue. Remember that House Finance has a bill that they are working on. That is HB 381. Senate Finance is working on Senate Bill 2001, or is it 3001? Anyway, they've got their bill that they're working on. Glenfarne in their presentation has said they're modeling, or they are discussing the Senate's version. So you have efforts going on in the House and efforts going on in the Senate right now. I believe both of them will probably come to a vote, but they'll be different bills. they're likely to be different bills. So the way that they can resolve that, during the committee process, they can have behind the scenes meetings between finance members of both houses and figure out what they want, which of the two bills is going to be the primary bill. My guess is it's going to be the Senate bill. And then they figure out behind the scenes what amendments need to be added to the Senate bill to make it look enough like 381 that it'll pass a vote on the House. And then the Senate amends 381 or amends 2001 to meet those needs for the House. Okay. They could do that. Or they could just send 2001 over to the House and have the House amend it themselves, which is also possible. Maybe a little bit more messy that way, but it's possible. 2001 has to go to the House. HB 381 has to go to the Senate. So there's opportunity for both of them to work on it. The longer that both houses keep their own bill, the less time it is for the other body to do the committee process on the other bills when they swap them, when they pass them over. Okay. So it makes sense to me that there's going to be some sort of coordination happening behind the scenes to the extent that it's possible. Maybe the two houses are not going to work together well. Maybe House Finance just wants something different than Senate Finance. The way that they will resolve it ultimately is take it to a conference committee. So it takes the membership, the large membership of the House Finance Committee and the large membership of the committee relatively of the Senate Finance Committee, and it reduces that down to a handful, a couple members, probably 6 members. And those 6 members of both bodies, right? It would be House members and Senate members on the conference committee. They would hammer out what needs to be hammered out in order to find agreement between those 6 members. And then that bill would go to both floors for a vote. Okay. So we've got a long way to go. You got a 30-day session, and I would assume the governor is going to extend the session or call a second special session if necessary, if the legislature cannot figure this out by the time that the first special session expires. Okay. So I'm not concerned with that at all. The governor's going to call him back. He's going to get his bill. Does he like the bill? I don't know. The amount of pressure that the legislature is going to be under as we move closer to election day, I think is a huge win here. It works in our favor, right? You don't want to be going into the election. Remember, all of these incumbent legislators cannot raise money for re-election, and some of them have stiff opponents in the primary. Take that back. They probably all, if they're having a top 4 primary, I don't know how many of them have more than 4, so it probably doesn't matter. If they've got more than 4, then they got to fight a primary. If there's only 2 people or 3 people running, then all 3 of them are going to the general, so it doesn't matter. The primary doesn't matter for the House and state races. But the point is, the longer they stay in special session, the longer that they cannot raise money for re-election. Okay. So there's pressure right there to get things done so that they can get back to their re-election campaign. All right. So the longer you stay in session, the longer the pressure is for getting something done. I think that's probably it. At the end of the day, the governor can also veto whatever comes forward. So this has got a long way to go. We're just at the very beginning, right? The Senate works the way the Senate's going to work. It's staffed with people who've been there. They're fixtures in the legislature. They're going to bend this to their will, and they're going to ask the questions, and they're just going to do it their way they do it because they get up in the morning and that's their prerogative, right? They don't have to have any better reason other than this is the way I want to do it. It is a form of arrogance. It is justify my behavior and my actions because of my position. Okay. I'm on the record. I am being very public here. Most of the conversations that they're having right now are not pertinent to the answer that they have to provide to the question. What is the correct tax regime? What is it? Cost of the project, cost overruns, whether it's going to hurt or help oil, what it does to Cook Inlet, all of that is irrelevant. Those are all things that are going to come to pass, and we'll have to deal with them if they do. That's like, you know what happens to an oil well when you first tap it? It starts to decline. So if we're going to start pulling gas and that means the oil well starts to decline faster, well, you know what that means? You got to go after more gas or go after more oil. You got to drill a new well. That's the only way. That's the answer, right? So we can save ourselves a whole lot of headache here and say, yeah, revenue might decline. It might grow. It might decline. It might grow. Depends on who you talk to. Ultimately, you got to drill more wells if you want to have continued supply of oil. There it is. Like, now, solve the tax problem. Do you want the pipeline or do you not want the pipeline? At the end of the day, that's the decision you have to make. Glenfarne has laid it out. If you don't modify the current tax structure, the project doesn't work. It is not economical and it doesn't go forward. Okay? So that's the starting point. You can ask all of these dumb questions. You can ask all these irrelevant questions to the tax conversation. But at the end of the day, you got to answer the tax conversation. Do you want the pipeline? Yes. Then find the right tax number. Glenfarne has proposed a volumetric tax. That is the right tax to go forward with for several different reasons. What's the right rate? 6 cents and 12 cents is what's being proposed. If you want it to be 7 cents and 13 cents, well, then propose it and move forward. Don't waste a whole bunch of time proving to the world that we can't manage ourselves. Anyway, I'm on my soapbox. All right, what's Glenfarne got left here?
Senator Keel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the question would be, are these agreements contingent on the phased structure? If you hit go tomorrow on the whole kit and caboodle, we get to the Golden Goose and we do LNG export, these are good, or does it have to be phase one first and then they'll buy LNG?
Senator Keel, through the chair.
Dude, you do not get it.
They want to see the project go forward, and it's a bit of kind of a risk qualitative question that you're asking. They want to see the project go forward. They want to see the pipeline go forward. And so if we could snap our fingers and have both pipeline and LNG facility go forward at once, they'd be happy for that. But obviously, putting the pipeline into place sooner allows us to get the contracts in place for LNG sales sooner and helps facilitate achieving FID on phase 2.
Senator Keel. Please proceed. Senator Sedgman.
So these are the buyers with the letter of intent. Do we have letters of intent from the producers to feed the line? Where's that structure?
Senator Sedgman, through the chair, when I identified the letters of intent and the gas sales precedent agreements that we've entered into with each of Exxon, Conoco, Hilcorp, and Great Bear, those are for the phase 1 of the pipeline, and so phase 2 gas supply is subject to further negotiation discussions with the producers.
Okay,
Senator Sedgman.
that's fine.
Thank you, Senator Sedgman. Please proceed.
Next, Chair Hoffman, I'll speak about the property tax reform itself, the subject of the special session. What is proposed in the property tax bill is an alternative volume tax, excuse me. It's a tax based on a per unit basis of gas that flows through the pipeline. And we often get the question of, why have we done it this way? Couldn't it be done, structured a different way? When you run an economic model for a project, yes, there are multiple different ways that you can, account for taxes. There are different ways that the legislature could propose to tax the project. We think that this AVT makes the most sense by far because it aligns both the project and the state in terms of seeing the project go forward. And so the way this is structured is that there is a tax, depending on which phase of the project we're talking about, between 6 cents per MMCF on the pipeline and 12 cents on the LNG facility and the gas treatment facility. Obviously, if you're taxing on a per unit basis, the more gas that flows on the pipeline, the more tax revenue that will generate for the state. And so it creates this very strong alignment to increase the volume of gas on the pipeline. The result of that, as we've talked about earlier, the more gas that flows on the pipeline, the lower the cost for domestic gas sales and the higher tax revenue for the state. So we think there's a great alignment there. In addition to that alignment on the project development is the certainty and the clarity that this provides. And so projects as complex as Alaska LNG, they really need as much certainty and as much forecastability as is possible. One of the things that has been considered in the proposal for this volumetric tax is the history of litigation and disputes over the value of the Trans-Alaska oil pipeline and how that has gone into essentially property tax value disputes that have continued to persist through the lifetime of TAPS. The AVT, the volumetric tax in terms of certainty, is also just very easy to calculate. There's a monthly report. There will be a monthly report of how much gas flowed through the pipeline, and then a per unit tax on each unit of gas that flowed through the pipeline. And so in terms of certainty and calculability, it's a very simple and straightforward for all parties involved. You can see the statement here. Without some type of reform, without some type of project, without some type of tax arrangement, the project financeability is severely challenged. And there's a question earlier about the schedule. I can tell you that yes, if there were no project, if there were no tax arrangement put in place, no tax bill passed put in place, yes, the schedule would become uncertain, so would the financeability of the overall project. We'd have to really explore a different commercial structure, go back to the drawing board on the entire Alaska LNG project if there were no tax bill put in place. These are, the lower half of this slide presents numbers that have been provided by the Department of Revenue. But again, the Department of Revenue representations have been that this project will unlock approximately $26.5 billion of state and local revenues in the form of taxes over its lifetime. A number I articulated earlier, 12,000 construction jobs, $10 billion of energy savings in the form of lower cost gas, and then $2.4 billion revenue generated to the benefit of the permanent fund. And so these are just some of the benefits as articulated by the Department of Revenue that would come to the state from implementation of this tax.
Do you have a time frame for that, those numbers?
Those are lifetime. Those are kind of 30-year lifetime numbers.
Senator Kaufman, then Senator Stedman.
Thank you. I think broadly the AVT makes a lot of sense. The pipelines, its really value is the scrap value of it if it's not flowing a commodity, and so I think taxing it for existing is much less beneficial to the state in the long run than taxing it for its economic performance. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Down lower in the table, there's no mention of the operations job. So I assume that over its lifetime, this will create significant jobs. In a world of automation, there's still things to do, especially on a work like this. So I think that might be another piece that's in there is the economic benefit through employment and the ripple effect of all that. the service industries that'll be helping keeping this thing up and running in good shape for all that time.
Sure. Senator Kaufman, through the chair. Yes, in terms of permanent direct jobs, you're well over 1,000 jobs for permanent long-term operating jobs, but then the many additional kind of secondary support roles and jobs that will come in all kinds of services to support those direct jobs. And we'd be happy to follow up with this committee with some more specific numbers on kind of those direct and then indirect job creation.
Senator Kaufman. Thank you, Senator Kaufman. Senator Stedman.
I got two issues, Mr. Chairman. Maybe we can get a reminder of the anticipated operating cost of the facility, both if it's just the in-state gas line and then at full completion. We've talked about the jobs or how many employees, roughly 1,000 or whatever, but if you could break that down into those two component parts and then the expected operating cost. And then dealing with the issue at hand here, which is the tax relief concessions that are being asked for to facilitate basically the cash flow of the construction. If we could, Mr. Chairman, we've got the list here of the volumetric tax and how that works when we have the full facility. But and we've got an updated cost numbers on page 9, high and low range. If we could have somebody put those together as far as the millage rate. I think we have a 20 mil tax, not counting the gas liquefaction plant in Kenai. That's a different scenario, different one. So they have to do, I guess, two component parts. But it'd be nice to see the magnitude of what we're talking about in dollars and the strain on the project to meet those obligations, and then the request to supplant both the petroleum tax issue and Kenai's property tax issue with this volumetric matrix that's being presented to the committee. That would be helpful if it was in a chart format.
Get your staff going there, Senator Stedman.
Senator Stedman, through the chair. If I may, I'd ask that some of those revenue numbers for projections of revenue to the state, I think might be better coming from the Department of Revenue. We're happy to support those, and if you don't have what you need, we can support that. And then in terms of your request for operating costs, if you allow, that's another element that we'd like to follow up with.
Senator Stedman.
Yes, I think the operating cost is more along Glenfarne's bailiwick, but either the Department of Revenue or our own Ledge Finance or our own team could put the other stuff together. It's pretty straightforward.
Thank you, Senator Stedman. Senator Merrick.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. If we pass the AVT, will Glenfarne support the escort tax?
Senator Merrick, through the chair, thank you. That's obviously a separate issue that's got a lot of concerns. That's a conversation we've had pretty heavily with a number of different legislators and legislative committees. What I will say is Glenfarne's not structured as an S corporation itself. We're structured as an LLC, and we have different investors coming into the project. But we're certainly open to a dialogue to ensure that kind of there's an appropriate tax for investors like Glenfarne will have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Merrick. Thank you for bringing that subject up. I'm sure this is not the last time that it's going to be addressed by this committee. Further questions?
Yeah, so there's telegraphing right there.
Thank you, Chair Hoffman. One of the questions that has come up has been a question about, has this been brought up? Why is this assumption being discussed now? And what we want to just reiterate, and I'll ask Mr. Kissinger to kind of give the historical, some of the historical insights. The property tax itself has been considered as a critical hurdle for this project for years. The assumptions that we had embedded into the project when we came into it, and then subsequently what we're working on with our counterparties now, does assume some form of tax relief. And I'll just reiterate that we addressed that as early as last summer in my testimony to the Joint Legislative Budget and Audit Committee, that there would be a need to have a serious discussion with the legislature during this session around tax relief. But
This is a direct response to many legislators claiming that Glenfarne has said they didn't need anything from the legislature, which is not accurate. It was not true. They were misleading people when they were saying that.
if I will, I'll ask Mr. Kissinger, if I may, I'll ask Mr. Kissinger to make some comments about kind of the historical recognition of the need for tax relief on this project.
Mr. Kissinger.
This is Matt Kissinger for the record. Chair Hoffman, I'll go into more detail on this tomorrow when we present as AGDC. We'll have a bit of historical context. But essentially, in 2019, we had a change at AGDC, sort of change of the board, change of directions. We followed a stage gate process from that point forward, with the first stage gate being an economic assessment stage gate. And again, I'll go through a lot more detail on that tomorrow. But the result of the economic assessment stage gate was that this project is economic, meaning it can deliver LNG to Asian customers competitively with other projects that are vying for that space. The problem was that we're right in the middle of the pack, and this project is a lot bigger and a lot more complicated than a lot of the other projects that we would be competing against. And so we needed to move the project more towards the front of the pack. And we identified several levers out of that exercise. One of them was the federal support, making sure that we got the federal loan guarantees changed or amended so that they could be used for this project, and we successfully did that. The next one was looking at the gas price, because this is raw, unprocessed gas. It still has CO2 in it, and we felt that the producer gas price assumptions were high, considering all of that. We moved that again through our negotiations with the producers. But the last one that had been identified by us as a major lever was the production tax, or the property tax. We didn't quite know where we stood with respect to other areas, other regimes that we're competing against. And so we brought in first Gas Strategies to take a look at that. Gas Strategies did a benchmarking process where they found that, especially if you're looking at the first 10 years of tax relief in some of these other jurisdictions, that we sort of had a whole order of magnitude higher property taxes, meaning 10 times higher than the next lowest, which was in Maryland. We were looking at, for this project, somewhere between $800 million and $1 billion a year in property taxes under the current structure. And, you know, these other places are paying at the highest, sort of $50 million a year. LNG Canada is somewhere around $27 million a year. And that's where we really started to go towards this 2 mil rate. And we thought, well, if it's a whole order of magnitude higher, for our assumption, what would happen if you had a 2 mil rather than a 20 mil rate? And we ran our economics with that going forward. We later brought in Wood Mackenzie and did a competitiveness analysis. This was after we'd made a number of structural changes, but did project finance, embedded this into it. And they came out with the same exact assessment that property tax, aside from capital cost overruns, that property tax was sort of the next biggest lever that could be moved on this project. And then that was further confirmed by Gaffney Klein, I think, in their own presentations to the legislative body.
Questions on this slide? Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess to either one of you, we've heard about other jurisdictions and the duration of property tax relief that they have afforded, and can you talk to us about where the breakpoints are? Is it a fully depreciated project at 7 years from initiation? Is it 10 years? Where are the changes in the material bankability of this project?
Senator, because of course we could gate this volumetric tax so that it's a smaller tax up front, and then over time it becomes a bigger tax because, hey, the government needs more money, right? Well, who's going to pay the tax? Alaskans will on their energy bill when their energy goes up to cover the cost difference with the increased tax. That's what you're going to have a conversation about if you're going to compare this to others and justify increasing tax on the gas pipeline because it just rises the price of gas for Alaskans. So of course, Southeast Alaska is going to be for that. What do they care? They're not buying the gas.
Through the chair, is Matt Kissinger still for the record. If you're talking specifically this project, because in some of those other areas, I think we'll acknowledge they have 10-year sort of tax abatements. Now, there's extensions on those as well, and so you can't look at it as just simply the first 10 years. But going back to our project requires 20-year tenors on the debt for the LNG side, and we're looking at 30-year tenors for the debt on the pipeline side. And really, to make the project the most appealing to the investors, which is really what we're trying to do here, having this sort of very stable and predictable tax for the whole duration of the tenor of that debt, we find to be important.
Senator Keel.
Well, can you give us a sense of the scale? I mean, we could make it as appealing and as stable as possible by writing you checks, but you're not asking for that, right? So.
Right.
Help us understand the scope or the scale of what some options would be.
Right. Senator Keel, through the chair, if you look at this slide right here, you actually see there's a tornado chart that's been provided by Wood Mackenzie. And in their analysis, the property tax, I believe, has about a 50-cent impact on the cost of delivering LNG. So to put that into perspective, you're competing in a range of the $9 to $10 delivered to Asia sort of range, and you need to be competitive against that. And so 50 cents in that kind of relationship, you can see is quite impactful, if that helps answer your question.
Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm thinking back on the conversations with Gaffney Klein, and I don't want to oversimplify his statements, but the suggestion I came away with was that that after year 10, the impact would be much reduced.
Senator Keel, through the chair, definitely your nearer term years, because you do discounting on the cash flows, they have the bigger impact. Again, these tax holidays you see in Louisiana and Texas, those are for simpler projects. They don't have the extent of ours with the pipeline, the gas treatment plant on the North Slope, et cetera. And so I would contend that in this particular instance, a duration longer than 20 years would be especially helpful in arranging the financing for the project. And that's why we would contend in the 20 to 30-year range.
Senator Keel.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if Mr. Prestidge might help.
Mr. Prestidge.
Thank you. Adam Prestidge for the record. What I'll also add is when we look at comparisons with other projects, you really have to look at kind of the makeup and the financing composition of each of those projects. For projects that are funded by national oil companies or by sovereigns or that are basically paid for on balance sheet, there's a consideration that I think does apply to that concept that Gaffney Klein has, that after a certain number of years, the project is more stabilized and is more capable of handling kind of that tax load. It's a little bit distinct from the way that we're taking this project forward, which is under a project finance model, which is effectively like having a mortgage on the infrastructure for 20 or 30 years. And so the lenders and investors of this project will forecast what they expect the tax burden on this project to be, and if there were an abatement that suddenly ended after 10 years and just reverted back to the statutory tax level, any lender or investor in the project would simply just calculate that based on the model, and they'd calculate that the amortization or the debt payments would be burdened by an increased tax rate, the day after the abatement terminated.
Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and as you say, project finance is complex. At the same time, we are looking for a stable arrangement. That's the goal. At least that's my goal. And I am concerned, as previous proponents of gas line projects have come hard up against the Alaska Constitution, we can't contract away the power to tax. If you want a stable tax, something that makes a material change in the project economics, but doesn't leave Alaskans with the sense that over the long term, we're giving up value from our resources, value from taxes to foreign LNG buyers for longer than we have to is going to be important. And
I'm about ready to explode. Says a guy who's never going to heat his home or business with natural gas from the pipeline. Incredibly short-sighted, Senator Keel. The value is much greater to those who are going to benefit from the gas flowing than you and your cohort there in the building receiving additional tax revenue. And low-cost gas for generations, how could that not be maximum benefit of the resource? Maximum benefit of the resource is not just taxation.
when we get to a point, and I hope we do, where Alaskans are burning 300 million, 500 million, 600 million cubic feet a day, but we're still exporting 3 billion, where who gets the tax benefit starts to gall people. And so I submit that a reasonable period at a reasonable rate gives you stability you can count on, and forever, or for 30 years, unless it's absolutely necessary, leaves you in a position where somebody's going to introduce a bill at year 7. And I don't.
How ridiculous. You don't have a pipeline. You don't have an alternative to Glenfarne. You don't have another set of customers out there. You have one project. You build the project, you have tax revenue. You don't build the project, you don't have tax revenue. You're comparing the opportunity that you have to something that you don't have. It's nonsensical. You should be comparing to the fact that you don't have tax revenue, and now you're going to have tax revenue. Not you. We could have lots of tax revenue, and here we're going to have less tax revenue. That model doesn't exist. That scenario doesn't exist. It is, we have no tax revenue. We say yes, and we have more tax revenue. How can that be wrong? You have more. Now you have less. Current statute, you have none. Change the statute, you have more tax revenue. to think that you can just say that because the statute says that the rate is at a certain point, that you somehow are losing that revenue is nonsense. It's nonsensical because you don't have a pipeline that gets built at that point. It's not there. It's a figment of your imagination. It's a figment of the statute because it was never created. The statute wasn't created with this project in mind. It isn't there. You don't get to say, well, we could have lots of tax revenue, but now we're going to get just a little bit of tax revenue. You can't say that. That's not a true statement. That's not what you're actually facing. You're facing no tax revenue, and with a pipeline, we would have more tax revenue.
I don't know if I'll pass it or not.
Senator Keel, through the chair. As I said earlier in the session, there are a number of different ways that you can calculate how to apply a tax onto a project, and you can have it. You can spread it equally over a period of time. You can have it higher, lower on different ends of the decades of operation of the project. One of the reasons that we have been supportive of the alternative volumetric tax, as opposed to asking for an upfront abatement, is that an upfront abatement for a number of years, call it 10, 15 years, whatever, would result in not generating any tax revenue from the project for the state during that period of time. And so a volumetric tax would generate tax revenue for the state, the day that it's applied. And so we see that as a way to have kind of upfront revenues as opposed to kind of putting all the revenues on the back end of the model, tax revenues.
Senator Keel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Keel. Please proceed.
This is a bit of a, this is Adam Prestidge for the record. This is a bit of a summary. Obviously, the bill that's been proposed, SB 2001, contains these concepts that we've talked about. An alternative volumetric tax of 6 cents on the pipeline, of 12 cents on the LNG facility and the gas treatment facility. The result of applying this tax regime to the project ultimately would create a framework that supports the economic strength and viability of the project, allows it to go forward with a level of certainty. The end result of that is ultimately lowering energy bills in Alaska, and basically allowing the project to go forward with clarity on how the project will be taxed. Again, some of these are numbers we discussed a little earlier. We've got the DOR, Department of Revenue, estimates of $26 billion of taxes and royalties over the 30-year life, over a 30-year calculation period. The lower energy costs to Alaskans, we estimate that on the average household, that reduction in gas price would result in $1,450 lower annual costs to residential consumers of gas, and then additional feature of revenues generated to the benefit of the Rural Energy Investment Fund. Senator Hoffman, the next section goes into some of the investment opportunities and equity structures of Alaska LNG. And so I guess I can pause here and ask if you'd like me to continue on to that kind of change of topic.
All right. We're going to call it a night. We can catch up with that later. That is an important conversation because that is how cost overruns would affect the state, I believe. If the state chooses to invest and becomes a equity investor, that if there is a cost overrun, the state is going to be on the hook. So this would be a mistake, in my opinion, if the state wanted to get involved. And I would argue, utilities, you're at your own risk if you want to invest in this and be on the hook if there's cost overruns. All right. Thanks for joining me tonight. Thanks for participating. Thanks for the good questions. We've got a long road ahead of us on figuring out what this is going to be like. House Finance is, I think, going to start taking amendments on their bill next Monday. I doubt that the Senate Finance is going to be that quick at this point. They started later, so maybe next week they'll have amendments. I don't know. When the Senate decides to move, they usually can move a lot quicker because there are fewer people. So we'll see. But I would imagine that amendments in both bodies will happen at some point in time next week, and then possibly a vote by the end of the week, or, well, I say a vote in the finance committees by the end of the week or early next week. I don't know whether they're going to be taking public testimony. They may be. I believe House Finance has already taken public testimony, so that may have satisfied that requirement. Anyway, just thinking. Think I'll be here tomorrow. Stay tuned. We may be back at 7 p.m. We may not. Depends on what happens in the legislature. All right. So if I come on, you'll see me and I'll see you. All right. Have a good night. Thanks for participating. If you like the show, you know what to do. Give me a thumbs up. Give it a share. Subscribe. You want to be notified when I come on? Hit subscribe on YouTube, and that's the easiest way. It pops right up and tells you that we're on, and you can watch for however long you got time for. All right. You want to catch the recording? It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's on X. It'll stay longer on YouTube than it does on the others, but you can find it there. And most importantly, tell somebody about it. Spread the word. Have a good night.